Now, did you know that over a quarter of women in Britain won't have a child by the time they reach 45? Now, one of those women, Jodie Day, has written a book because she believes that women without children are treated quite differently, and I kind of get her point. I mean, I was reading this article about her and she did want children, so this is not a woman who's made a decision not to, and there are lots of women that do that, and I'm sure that will come up in this discussion, but Jodie did want children and just didn't meet the right person, whatever, it didn't work out for her. She's in her 40s now, so that's passed her by. Now, I didn't have Jack till I was 42, and now I always wanted children, and I did start getting to the stage in my late 30s where all my friends had children, and I almost slightly started avoiding certain social situations as much as I love them and love their kids, because you almost feel like you're not part of the club. And even if, and it might be your own insecurity, and I don't know if people intentionally do that, but I do take her point that this perception of women who don't have children, you feel slightly excluded sometimes.
No, I do take her point, and I understand why you must have felt like that with women who had children. And I always swore before I had children, I always wanted children, but I always swore I wasn't going to become this baby bore and blah, blah, blah. But the sad thing is, you do. Yeah. And I used to sit with my friends and go, what did we ever talk about before we had children? Because they just take over, in a great way, in my opinion, they took over my life. So I understand for you, or somebody like you coming in and think, oh, no, I can't be bothered meeting them today. But it's very hard
as well, like the fun auntie, you know, it's like, oh, Ruth's fun, and it was all, you had to love everyone's children, and, you know, most of them I did, some of them I didn't. And I know one of my, mentioning no names, obviously, it's the quickest way to lose friends, isn't it? But I remember a really good friend of mine, one of my best friends, who's a bit younger than me, she phoned me to tell me that she was pregnant, and I did have that little seed of jealousy. I couldn't help it, and I made myself go, oh, that's fantastic, I'm so pleased for you. And we've talked about it since, and she said she was a bit reluctant to phone me because she knew that I really wanted kids, and at that point, actually, I was trying. So it's a bit of a minefield, isn't it, Janet, with friends?
Yeah, Ruth, I think it's really interesting that now a huge number of women in Britain haven't got children. I think it's 1 in 4 women in their 40s have not got children, and as you said at the start, obviously there's going to be a large number of women who'd like to have children and didn't manage to, largely because women are having children later and later and later. And I've got a statistic here, which is that women in their mid-40s now are twice as likely to be childless compared to their parents' generation. So the number of women is going up and up and up, childless women. So we've got to unpick what's going on in their mind. And as you said earlier, the ones that wanted children and didn't manage, well, I do feel genuine concern for them. But then, speaking as someone who didn't have children and never really wanted children, and I was a bit of an object of curiosity to a lot of people, you know, back then, obviously being the oldest person on the panel, I've lived with it for quite some time.
But it probably would have been considered a little bit.
Yeah, my mother was always on at me about why don't you have a child, and I said, get a dog. You know, once get a dog.
I think things have changed. I think, especially for my generation, I don't want kids at all, and I feel nah.
And you've always felt like that?
I've always felt like that, yeah. I just suppose I haven't got the same yearnings that I know, like, other women my age have, like my sister has them. Do you know what I mean?
What if you met a guy that you fell madly in, you fell madly in love with him, and he wanted children?
I suppose, like, that's a specific situation, and I would have to, like, address that then. But for me, like, I wouldn't be willing to compromise what I wanted to keep someone else happy. So,
how old are you now? Because
28.
28.
But Vicky, isn't that because of where you come from in that environment? There are loads and loads of single women with kids, and you can see the stark reality of being a single mother. I mean, there are a lot of women in this country who are single mums with kids who are struggling, and they're finding it tough. So do you think that's affected how you think, perhaps subconsciously?
Not at all. Like, I think if a kid is being looked after, whether it be by 2 parents or whether it be by one, as long as they're loved, I don't necessarily think, like, I don't think that should matter. For me, I just don't want a child, whether it be with a man, whether it be on my own, like.
What about with previous relationships? If they started talking about kids, did you instantly go?
I ran off.
Yeah. To be honest, that's the thing.
do you ever ask yourself why, or do you know why? Is it because you think, well, I want a career, I want to do more things, I don't want to be tied down, or I don't feel I'm responsible enough to be a mother? Is there a reason, or do you just a feeling?
I suppose it's probably a culmination of a lot of the things you've just said there. Like, I'm very career-driven. Do you know what I mean? I like the fact that I can do what I want when I want to do it. I've got no responsibilities, I've got no ties. I'm a little bit selfish, and I'm not embarrassed to admit that.
But Vicky, you're saying you're selfish. That's what they used to say to me, but that implies that that's doing yourself down. You don't have to think you're selfish, it's your choice. And when people say to me, oh, you've taken a very selfish decision not to have kids, as if...
So it's like, hang on, I haven't. I've just done what I want to do with my life, and that's fine.
Yeah. In my life, I don't feel that I was selfish. I felt that I lived the life that I wanted, and I've enjoyed work, and I think I've led a positive life, and, you know, I'm trying to think of how to relate to my friends' kids. It's true, I always find it quite difficult to relate to kids. Quite difficult.
Can I just say, though, I admire you for being, standing up and saying, look, I don't want kids. Whatever you think of me for that, I don't want kids. And I think that's right. I don't think you should ever be forced. But can I say to all you people that don't want kids, can you please stop trying to parent mine?
Can I read some of the comments? We've had loads of comments. I've got... Sarah says, if you've got the choice, it's up to the individual what they decide to do. Being honest, a lot of parents may think they made the wrong choice, but they never admit it. Mandy says, I made the choice very early not to have children. I've lived a full life filled with travel, friends and fun. I've saved for my future, and my friends' children are close. I definitely made the right choice. Liz says, I never judge anyone for not having children, but I feel sorry for them.
Yeah. And she actually said in that article as well, there's always this notion that life would be just perfect if you just had the children, as if your life's not perfect or fulfilled without them, which I think is interesting as well.